autumn in New Hampshire. Join us as we journey through White Mountains National Forest and explore the heights of Mount Washington in part 3 of our trip through New England. In this video, we spend time exploring Franconia Notch, enjoy rare weather atop Mount Washington, and camp in the White Mountains National Forest. In my previous video, we'd hiked to Lonesome Lake Hut, and after hiking back in the morning, we headed down to Woodstock for lunch and then up I-93 to Franconia Notch State Park. Cannon Mountain is a ski resort, and in summer it's a popular way to reach the top of a 4,000 footer. Cannon Mountain featured the first ski racing slope in the United States and also the first aerial tram in the US, which was constructed in 1938. The current tram was built in 1980. The view included a lot of red and yellow in the trees. It was the first week of October. From the top of Cannon Mountain, we decided to go on a little hike and take in some of the views. The top of Cannon Mountain offers great views of Mount Lafayette and Mount Lincoln, as well as along the I-95 corridor when you're looking south. Next, we headed down to Lafayette Place Campground to check in for the night in Franconia Notch State Park and enjoy some of the local wildlife. My only downside with this campground was there's a lot of noise you can hear from I-93 throughout the entire campground. But it was autumn and a beautiful day, so we decided to hike over to a playground in the park. It's certainly great just to sit and enjoy the leaves. I guess I'm a leaf peeper now. After we had driven up a day early to escape Hurricane Ian, it was great to enjoy several days of perfect weather. Once we set up camp, we decided to cook some dinner and walk back down to the store to pick up some firewood for the night. The following morning, we headed over to the Kancamagus Highway, also known as New Hampshire Route 112, which took us over towards Conway. The fall colors were very beautiful, and as it was the Thursday before Columbus Day weekend, it was getting very crowded, and all the overlooks and stops along the highway were very busy. It reminded me a lot of the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina and Virginia. In Conway, we stopped and took in some views and enjoyed an afternoon snack as we headed towards Mount Washington a little bit further north. North of Conway, we started to get our first glimpses of the Presidential Range, part of the White Mountains with some of the highest peaks in the area. And finally, we were on the auto road heading up towards the peak of Mount Washington. As soon as we got out of the trees, we started seeing beautiful views, and later on I looked it up online, and this is one of the highest elevation gain roads in the continental United States, as far as I can tell. I'm sure there's other ones, but the elevation gain is actually higher than driving Mount Evans in Colorado, as well as driving up Independence Pass or Cottonwood Pass. I think it's about the same or a little bit less than Pikes Peak. Once we reached the top, we decided to check out the gift shop and the cafe area before heading down to the museum. In the museum, they said only about 30 days a year is it clear skies overhead here at Mount Washington, so we're pretty lucky. And then from there, we could see the old cog railway coming up. It was such a beautiful day, close to the weekend. The peak was pretty crowded, but the views were stunning and well worth it, especially to see it in such clear weather. The cog railway was significantly more expensive for us than driving up the road, so we opted for that. With the views being so good with clear weather, we decided to do Mount Washington today, even though we just went to the top of Cannon Mountain the previous day. I think if either yesterday or today had been pretty socked in, we would have opted for some waterfall hikes, so didn't really get to see any waterfalls while we were up here. But, you know, when the weather's this good, you gotta take advantage of the views. Let's just spend a few minutes and explore the summit. My kids asked, who put this snow here? Well, it had snowed not too long ago up here, and this was the last patch of it that was left, I believe. The temperatures in the first week of October were very pleasant up here, but a little bit chilly. Mount Washington is the highest mountain once you get north of southern Virginia on the East Coast. If you're taking the Appalachian Trail, the last time that it goes past a 6,000 foot mountain is Grassy Ridge that's on the North Carolina-Tennessee border, until you get to Mount Washington, that is. The mountain certainly is a lot more prominent than a lot of the mountains in the southern Appalachians, meaning that the elevation from the base of it, the surrounding area, up to the peak is a good bit higher. The Tip Top house was closed for renovations, so we had to make our way back to the museum. The kids love climbing on all the boulders up here. The worst weather in the world, but not today. We decided to mail a postcard from the top here. There is actually a little small post office in the concessions area. Here's the cog railway arriving at the summit of Mount Washington. If you had the time and the money to do it, I think it would be worth it. I think it would have been nice to have stayed up here until sunset, but we needed to go have some dinner and get ready to camp for the night. Now it's time to head back down the mountain, which is not for a squeamish driver as there's no guardrails. However, I have noticed in older videos a lot of this road was still dirt, but now all those portions have been paved over, so it is paved all the way to the top. Make sure you use a low gear and don't ride your brakes too heavily. Certainly is one of the more interesting drives I've done. Along the way, we stopped for several breaks and just take in the views from different parts of the mountain. Subaru's been all over the place during that year. Over 10,000 feet in New Mexico and now to the top of Mount Washington in New Hampshire. Back down among the trees as we get ready to exit the Mount Washington Road and head up to Gorham, New Hampshire. From the base of the Mount Washington Auto Road, it was just a short drive north up to Gorham, New Hampshire, which I found to be a nice little town. Found a place to get some nice pizzas. Always a welcome treat after a long day. This old train here looks like maybe it's some sort of museum piece. At Gorham Commons there was a playground and also something like a farmer's market going on. Had a lot of people out, so we decided to get some dessert. There's only a few minutes back down south to Dolly Copp Campground, where we stayed for the night. It's a National Forest Service campground, and I was actually surprised it was not full at all, even though it was the Thursday before Columbus Day weekend. White Mountains National Forest is very beautiful, and got to see a lot of the colors here in the campground. It was a quiet, very quiet, peaceful night, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot quieter than the Lafayette Place campground. Enjoyed doing some relaxing by the campfire before we decided to turn in for the night. The next morning we decided to walk around the campground and explore, and there was not a lot of people here, but the facilities were very nice. Definitely recommend this campground. After that it would be time to head towards Maine on the next leg of our adventure. Next up, we travel through the woods of Maine, down to the coast and lighthouses, and then back again to New Hampshire.